It's also today's Vav Menachemov, is the Yahrtzeit of my mashpia Reb Yoel ben Reb Rafal Nachman HaKohen Kahan, Reb Yoel Kahan as he was known, passed away last year on this date on Vav Menachemov. So we're also dedicating the shir in his memory, and it's to his credit that I teach you Chasidus. It's not that I didn't learn Chasidus before. My father taught me Chasidus. The Rebbe taught me Chasidus in a way. My other teachers taught me some Chasidus, but I didn't really have an appreciation and understanding until I came to learn and to hear and with Rabbi Yoel Kahan. So I personally have a great debt to repay for what he did to me, and the truth is, for any and every Lubavitcher that's anything, wherever you meet, from at least the last, from 30 years and before, is his doing. So I'll give you an example. There's a Rav in Rehovot, who's one of the Rabbani Lubavitch, Rabbi Mendel Gukowski. He's a student of Rabbi Yoel Kahan. Not in Halacha, not in Gemara, but informing the person to follow this approach, to be excited to be a Lubavitcher. It comes from him. And so I could enumerate one after the other all his Talmud, Rabbi Garlitsky in Tel Aviv, who has 50 Chabad houses, 50 shluchim under him. He's a student of Rabbi Yoel Kahan. Rabbi Yoel Kahan was the individual who gave us the drive, because he was full of drive. Hashem didn't bless him with children, so he had one thing in his life, really. Rebbe, and Rebbe, which means Chasidus, which means God, Torah, and Chasidus. Those are the three things that, and he was a man on the street. You know what I'm saying? He could appreciate a good joke and a good laugh. He wasn't like removed. That's why, when I would come to his house and I would find him at a time laying on the couch. I mean, here's your Rebbe. He's a world genius, literally a world genius, like a Rebbe Soloveitchik head, okay, a Rebbe head. That wasn't a Rebbe, but I'm saying his head was genius. And he's laying on the couch and he's talking to you. So one second. So I want you to understand, most of you probably went to college. I don't think that you had that type of relationship with your professors. But we did. And I'm not going to say everyone did, but Baruch Hashem, I was Zoicha, and I made an effort. This is important. You can have the nicest and best teacher, but if you don't exert yourself and you don't push yourself, nothing will come from it. Not much. And believe me, there were a lot of such students too. Yes, Moshe.
Was Rav Yoel, forgive me for asking this question, maybe you should talk about it a little bit just now. In terms of Nigla, I'm sure he was a genius in Nigla, but do you mind? I'm just curious. Where was he? Like,
I wrote about this extensively in my book, but briefly, there is a Jew that lives right around the corner, lives on Dolev. His name is Rabbi Shoel Fasten. You must know him. Some of you.
Yeah, he davens in Kaaba.
Okay, I thought at Shabbos he doesn't daven at Chabad? No?
I think he died in the Kaaba because it's hard for his legs. It's hard for him to go upstairs.
Uh-huh.
I think.
Okay.
I think that's the reason.
So he's from Brooklyn, And I remember him yet 30 years ago. And when I was in Bet Shemesh, I spoke to him, and he told me a fascinating thing. He told me that in the early 1960s, 63, 64, something like that, Rabbi Yoel offered to learn with him Gemara. He was very smart. He graduated early. He got smicha, I think, at 16, and he started to go to Litvish yeshivas. Then he came back to Chabad yeshiva, 770. So it seems to me that the administration said, we want to really hold this guy to stay in Lubavitch, but he has this strong desire to learn Gemara more than Chasidus. So who did they kind of ask to deal with him? Rabbi Yoel Kahan, because he had, like I said, both of these things. On one hand, I'm not, he's like a nice person. On the other hand, he can outdo you in learning, in anything. In other words, even a Gemara that he didn't learn, he knew better than you. Because when he opened the Gemara to learn that piece of Gemara, he showed you have no understanding, even though you went to the best shiur. I mean, and it didn't take him long. And I have stories about that too. He was a genius. So he told me, Rabbi Fasten, that he learned with, Rabbi Yoel learned with him, I think every day for an hour. And he said to me, I could tell you that Yoel Kahan was a Bucky in Shas. And when I heard that, I was like blown away, and I said, I don't believe it, because I mean, at the end of the day, to be a Bucky in Shas, you have to spend time learning Shas, and I know that most of his from the time that we know him, he came to America in 1950. As far as what was known by people was he wasn't learning Gemara most of the time. He was learning Chasidus and writing the Chabad Encyclopedia and the Farbrengens. He was occupied working for the Rebbe. So he says, I cannot tell you, Rabbi Fasten says, I can't tell you where he got it. Maybe he got it in his youth, which he did. He learned a lot of Gemara in his youth by Reb David Povarsky, who became the Rosh Hashiva in Ponevezh, was his Rosh Hashiva in Achei Tmimim in Tel Aviv in 1943, before Reb David went over in 44, 45 to Ponevezh. He says, I just tell you that when we learn, it's like the entire Shas. He knows. So I don't know how, I don't know when, I can just tell you that. So I'm sharing with you, Moshe, with what he told me, and he's in the community. Ask him. Ask him if this is not what he told me. I wouldn't make up such a thing. So I don't have the data to support, that he learned this amount of hours and these years, and then he went over to learn mostly Chasidus. I don't have that data, and I don't know if anyone does. But the 2 points I'm making is that Fasten says that when he learned with him, he would cite Gemaras and Tosfos all over, which showed that he knew everything in Shas. And even if that's not exactly literal, but it's more figurative, okay? Nevertheless, for sure, if you sat down with him and you went to Rabbi Arieli's shiur at the Mir, or the Rav Shach shiur in Ponevezh, or Rabbi Aaron Kotler's shiur in Lakewood, and Rabbi Yoel Kahan would sit down with you, he would make mincemeat of you in understanding the Gemara. There's not even a question. How do I know this? His chavrusa in Achei Tmimim in the early 40s was Shloimke Berman. Shloimke Berman became the son-in-law of Rabbi David Povarsky, later became a Rosh Hashiva in Ponevezh. And he had an outstanding head. So, and this I'm telling you now is Rebbeinu Povarsky, who's one of today's Rosh Hashivas in Ponevezh, said over this, and it's on tape and on video. So it's from his mouth. He says he didn't learn in Lubavitch because his father was the Rosh Hashiva, so it wouldn't work. So Beryl Povarsky didn't learn there. So he learned in another yeshiva. When he came home one day, he says, my father said, Yoel ke tut beser v'shleimke. Reb Yoel knows better the Gemara than Shlomo Berman. That's what Reb David Povarsky said to his son when he came home from yeshiva one day in commenting on the two star students of the yeshiva, Reb Yoel Kahan and Reb Shlomo Berman. And he said that Yoel knows better. That's one story. Another story is, at that time, Reb Yoel's parents lived in Ramat Gan. So the yeshiva was in Tel Aviv. So on Friday they would go back and forth on the bus. So one time after Shlomo Berman left already, his chavrusa in Lubavitch Yeshiva left for Panovich, he would start up with him, and he said, what are you wasting time learning Chasidus in Lubavitch? Come to Panovich, we learn Gemara, and we learn, I'm saying, only Gemara, and you're a genius. You'll become the next Rosh Yeshiva, which you could have. You could have been the Rosh Yeshiva of Panovich. Guaranteed. And he was bothering him. And Reb Yoel was a very sensitive person and a Baal Midas. On his caver it says, Baal Kisharin, Midas, Yerushamayim. And that's a quote from the Rebbe. He's talented, he has beautiful Midas, and it's a Yerushamayim. And Hasidim don't put on a caver just anyone's quote. This comes from the Lubavitcher Rebbe, who wrote this in a letter or two to someone else, I think, about Reb Yoel. Anyway, so he couldn't, he was a sensitive boy, and he was really bothered that his good friend, Shlomo Berman, is bothering him and nudging him to come to Panovich and belittling Lubavitch Yeshiva, the learning. So Reb Yoel said, what Gemara are you learning? And he tells him, and he showed him that he doesn't know Pshat. And he was also a genius. So you're talking about it. This is a long answer, Moshe, to your question. And I really have to learn the Maimon. I cannot take any more questions on this, Moshe. I got to finish this paragraph, this chapter. So let's get to the text. And it's a very important chapter, okay? So, Moshe, hold it for another time. Page 97, chapter 20. These two things, which are, Aleph, Chadirosa b'chol chelki nefesh ruch neshama chaya v'acha po'eles gam b'nefesh abamis u'ba'olam. Now, the first thing, that Chasidus impacts, it permeates all aspects of Torah, including the nefesh abamis and the world we live in. Beis bitu atzmusay hu dafka yidei pulos emam b'nefesh abamis u'ba'olam. And number two, that when do you truly experience the essence of Torah, the essence of Chasidus? When it makes an impact on the Nefesh Abamis and the world. If it doesn't make a difference in Nefesh Abamis in the world, you don't have the essence. So this is what we learned yesterday. So now the Rebbe says in the third paragraph, Yesh dugmosa b'cholin kecholin Chasidus gam b'nigla. The Rebbe, as I told you many times, always found support for his ideas and teachings of Chasidus in Nigla, in Halacha, in Talmud, in Gemara, in Halacha, in Nigla. Uva Halacha, in Nigla and in Halacha. Not only that, the Rebbe says the following Halacha will become clearer and there'll be more understanding of it based on Chasidus' interpretation and insight. And let's see what this is. Here we go. Okay, there is a halacha that 4 cubits of a person, the 4 cubits of a person, Yaini, acquires an object for him wherever he is. Besimta, in an alley, betzidi reshus harabim, in a side street of a public domain, ubenegei legit in the kedushin gam bereshus harabim kamadeyos, and regarding a get. If a get is given or found in that area, is it a good get? even if it's in a public domain, many opinions say it is. I'm not going into the details of the halachas because there's a lot here a lot of details. But let's just cover the ground and talk cursory about the idea. This acquisition of a person's 4 cubits is an enactment of the sages. We call that takonas chachomim. So that people should not come to quarreling. Right? If you say, this is my object, and I didn't have it in my house, but I had it, Yoni, on my steps. Avram, I had it nearby, but it's mine. Somebody says, if it's yours, why isn't it in your house? There'll be big fights, quarrels. So the halacha says, the Hillel halacha says, Arba amos shel adam koinos. The 4 amos of a person accomplishes acquisition. That's the halacha in short. Next paragraph. Although the halacha applies to an object that lies within the 4 cubits of man, it becomes acquired by him. Nevertheless, in order to acquire it, hiknu loy. Next page 99. So the rabbi enacted even more that the 4 amos of a person is considered kinyan chotzer, acquisition by chotzer, by property. By day zeh uvemela koinus loy as a chayfetz hamunach behem b'teiras kinyan chotzer. In other words, again, there's a lot of details here, but basically there's different ways of acquiring, of kinyan. For example, when the chassan gives the kala the ring, right? And he says, Harei at mukadeshet li, he's being kona the wife, according to one opinion. The kala, the bride. The Gemara says, B'shleisha drochim, in 3 ways, you're kona the kala. B'kesef b'shtar bia, through money, that's like the ring. B'shtar, through a contract, ksuba. B'bia, through intimate relations, right? So today, the chuppah kind of serves as all 3. These are many details. So don't catch me, don't catch me. Well, my rabbi said that the kinyan of the chuppah is really the yichud room. It's also true. Okay? I'm just talking generally. The point he's making here is that the chayfetz, that the object that finds itself in the 4 cubits is acquired through one's chutzah, which means one's property. Therefore, listen to this. A minor who doesn't have property, he doesn't have 4 cubits. What do you mean? Every person has 4 cubits around them. You're right. The question is whether the 4 cubits around the person has the din, has the law of property, of your property. And since you're a cotton, since you're a minor, so the laws of Chatzar don't apply, therefore the law of Daladamas doesn't apply. Elo, shezeh, mashehiktu chachomim l'adam is Daladam. The fact that the Chachamim gave a person the acquisition rights within 4 amas, hurak l'tzeirach kinyan chayfetz hamunach behem, it's only when there's a chayfetz, when there's an object that lies there, v'loy le'inyan acher, and not for any other purpose. Look at note 157 briefly. Therefore, Tosfos argues, maintains, it's on page 198 in the bottom, on the right side, 157, note 157. Tosfos maintains that the 4 cubits did not acquire for theft, even though the sages made them as his own property. Why? You steal something and you leave it in your 4 cubits. It's mine. No. The whole idea is by a chayfetz, by an object for the purpose of acquisition when you're allowed to acquire. You're not allowed to acquire. You're not allowed to acquire theft. It's not yours, Yoel, right? It's Geneva. You've stolen it, right? If you've stolen, right? So to say that the Dalet Amos acquires theft for you is ridiculous. It's an oxymoron. That's what he says here. Next paragraph. V'ime yoisha kinya the Dalet Amos, hu mitam kinya chotzer. So again, and although we're arguing and positioning and saying that the acquisition of the 4 amas of man, of a gadol, not a cotton, is coming from the perspective of property chotzer. B'chol ze odav hu mikinyan chotzer. It's even better than chotzer. Shechotzer she'ein mishtameres. Because if you have a property that's not supervised, gam kishoyim b'kidav la'chefetz b'yifus yuchel n'tesatz v'v'likloi, a chotzer that doesn't have a fence and it's totally like open. It's called a chotzer she'ein mishtameres. And such a chotzer, even though you could jump out of your window and out of your door and get the item, the fact is that your chotzer is unguarded. So take, for example, the lawns. I'm saying this probably. The lawn, if it doesn't have a fence around it, it's in a way a chotzer she'ein mishtameres. Now again, the question is, in American law, your lawn is considered your property, so it could be that's not the case. But I'm talking about, forget about American law for a second. Anyone walks down the street can take anything that's on the lawn. So although you could walk out of your house and you can get the item, Moshe, but the fact is that the lawn is not guarded. What if you put a fence around it? Oh! Now you've made your lawn into a property, a chotzer, that's mishtameres. Let's continue.
What about hedges? Like
Okay, it could be. It could be. Again, this is all discussed. But it could be Yoni, yes. So what do we say? A chotzer that's not mishtameres ain't a koina sheyoymer zochsa li sodai. Gemara teaches, and it's brought in Halacha, when the person says, let my sodai, my field, acquire the item that ends up on my lawn, then it could be. But the person has to make a statement, zochsa li sodai. V'ilu, conversely, Dalet Amos, a person's 4 cubits around himself, although it's not guarded, and tzarech leimer zochsa, he doesn't have to say, my 4 cubits should merit for me. Halacha says, of the 4 cubits around you, acquire an item without you knowing even about it. And even if you're not interested in it. Your 4 cubits, Dalet Amos, is you. You hear that? It's you. This is the halacha. Asks the Rebbe, since the entire logic of the acquisition right given to the 4 cubits is because of the chotzer kinyan, the acquisition of property, the property acquisition, skip the parentheses, very strong and beautiful question. How is it possible that the 4 cubits kinyan is stronger than the chotzer kinyan? By chotzer kinyan, you say, if it's not guarded, whether it be with those bushes like Yodi said, or a fence, whatever the case, it's not yours. Unless you say zochsali. You don't say zochsali, it's not yours. Whereas with Dalet Amos, the Dalet Amos around you, you don't have to say anything and it becomes yours. That's his question. Next page, 101. The explanation is, Dalet Amos shel adam is pashetes b'chinas hayechidah shaboy. This is unbelievable. You know why the 4 cubits around you acquires without anything, because that's your essence, that's your yechida. That's why it accomplishes acquisition without you uttering a word and even without you knowing about it. This is rich within rich. Because when it comes to yechida, it doesn't work and doesn't need knowledge and intellect. It's essence. The extension of yechida within the 4 cubits of man is for the purpose of acquiring the chayfetz. What's that object? That chayfetz means an object. Haknoas dover gashmi shebechutz liyodam. To acquire something in the bowl that's outside of man, yechida accomplishes that it's the essence experience that will even bring an object that's on the outside to you. And it explains. HaKoiches shel ha'odam atzmai. The chol ha'pchinas nefdal the pchinas nefesh m'sham m'chai shaboy. A person's intellect, a person's emotions, a person's behavior, a person's will. Arba amos, 4 amos. In other words, if you just focus on the 4 amos and you don't have the yechida backing you, the you, then your arba amos are worthless. When you use your talents and your faculties, as Yonason says, to refine something that's outside of you, which would be a similar analogous to the acquisition of an object into man's possession, to refining it for the purpose of God, that's when you have yechida. So the Rebbe is using a halacha and a gemara to support his idea of yechida. And again, let's just review for a minute. When does the 4 amos, your 4 cubits, accomplish acquisition? When it's coming from you. When there's a you there. You represents yechida, essence. When you are alive, when you are functioning, when you're living yechida, then it will accomplish that even the outside, the nefesh habamis, and the world will become spiritualized. The Dalet Amos of Shel Adam, without the you behind it, is meaningless. In other words, let's put it this way. Someone who develops their mind, and develops their heart, and develops their behavior, and develops their willpower, so you say, gewaltig, what else is there? That's very nice, but it's all fascinations. It's all dress up. There needs to be a you. A you means the essence, the person. Who are you? Not what you're doing. Who are you? The Rebbe says, this is why Chasidus, which is analogous to Yechida, is the as essential nakuda of Torah and of life that brings the you into every aspect of what you do, through your mind, through your heart, through your action, through your willpower, and it makes it possible to uplift the nefesh habamis and the world at large. What comes out from this, and we'll conclude tomorrow, Hashem, is that without Chasidus, without learning Chasidus, this is missing. So you'll say, but people are frum, and people are religious, and people are... It's all true. It's all true. But, as I've said over and over, and we've discussed it many times, the cat comes out of the bag. the cat is carrying that famous fable, the dessert on a tray at a wedding, because it sees waiters doing it. It says it wants to do it, and all of a sudden a mouse comes, or just the opposite. The mouse does it, and the cat comes, and it drops it. It gets scared. What does that fable, that anecdote represent? The you is missing. You're not a cat, but you're not a mouse. And you're not a human. I'm sorry, you're not a human. Animals aren't waiters. They don't have the seichel to carry food. And if they do, it's only temporarily, and it's only an acquired trait. But as soon as something goes against its behavior mode, it drops it. It gets scared, it runs away. It doesn't have the seichel. So too, in what we're learning now, without the yechida, you don't have taka the power. So, if I may be so bold as saying, I understand when the chassid or 2 or 3 told me, we don't have the strength to go to a kibbutz and be makar of people there. I understand it. I fully understand it. I'll say the chassidim and they dress like chassidim. That's not where it's at. Like we discussed yesterday, the question is whether yechida is illuminated. Are you living with yechida? You can be a Masnagid, you can be a Litvak, you can be a Svar, you can be I don't care. That's all semantics. Are you living with yechida? Be true to yourself. And to end, this was Rabbi Yoel, my mashpia. He was true to himself, and that's what he taught us. Be honest with yourself. Don't fool yourself. Know who you are, and that's a life's mission. And when you'll know who you are, you'll be the happiest person. Why? Because you won't be a fool. And the worst thing in Chabad was to be a fool. And there's a lot of fools today. A lot of fools. With all kinds of colors and hats. And there's a lot of fools out there. You got to be emes. You have to know what you could do. You have to know what you can't do. And you have to keep on working. And I'm sure Hillel in his work, in social work and therapy, has, the same ideas, similar ideas. And we need to really bring in more and more from Torah-valued therapists and professionals to help today with the youth, and not to put the blame on the parents and on the teachers, which is another thing that I really want to address in the future. I grew up in a home where this is the way it was. European parents, right? And did I come out so bad? Of course I'm not perfect, far from it. But it wasn't only me, it was my whole culture. Okay? So we didn't take drugs. We didn't sleep around. We didn't do terrible things. Okay? Whereas many of the college kids did. And that's just a fact. I'm not telling you anything new. And so why can't it work today? You know why it's not working? Because people are lying to themselves and they're not saying the truth. They're the rabbi is wrong, the teacher is wrong, the gabbai is wrong, the parent, my father, he's terrible. I got to talk against him. This is not good. This is not yechida. I'm not saying that we parents don't need work. We need a lot of work. And rabbis need work. And teachers need, it's all true. But there needs to be, that's why I say, go back to the basics of Torah value therapy. And Rabbi Yoel spoke about this after they came out with the Kol of the Shofar in 2000, COTS, C-O-T-S, Kol of the Shofar, which was another form of the Werner Erhard Est movement. It was just dressed up another way, self-improvement. And I told you, they sat around, and it was men, talking negative about their parents. And it crept into Chabad and other frum communities. And Rabbi Yoel got up, and I think 2,000 people in the room, December 24th, I believe, year 2000. And he said, Rabbi Isai, we are missing something. We're not learning Tanya, and we're not living Tanya. It's all there. And if you need a therapist, so get a therapist who learned Tanya, who understands Tanya, and knows how to articulate it and market it in a way that you can hear it. Fine. But Chabad, Chasidus, that's what Chabad, it deals with the emotional issues. So I remind myself, it says Yahrtzeit today, in his schus, that we should continue living the truth. And that's another one of the things that I learned from him so much in my life, is not to give in. And again, I have faults. We have faults. That's a given. But not to give in to the ways of the world. Because as soon as you give in, the next generation takes it another step. And the third generation takes it another step. So today, it's been, everyone's bringing up, I have a transgender issue. I have this in the front community. Right? I'm not saying it needs to be dealt with. I'm not suggesting, Yoni, the way, our grandparents said, that's the way it is, and too bad. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying is that the Torah value therapy and responses to these answers are the answers. And there's answers for everything. Because homosexuality and those type of things began thousands of years ago. For Haraya, it's in the Torah. So you don't think in the time of King Solomon, Shlomo HaMelech, there weren't homosexuals and lesbians and transgenders? There were. It's Gemara. It's all Gemaras. Ein chadash tachat hashemesh. There's nothing new. But the answer is, do we say this is the new way, and therefore we say no, the Torah is the way, and now we're going to find ways and work very hard how to deal with these issues. And that is the approach. You have to begin from there. That's where you have to begin. And I believe that when we, elderly people who've experienced life, who are in a role of parents, grandparents, teachers, gabayim, etc., community people, we will be able to show our youth that it worked for us and it'll work for you. It worked for us, and that's what I heard from my father growing up. I worked hard. I had no bread to eat in the Holocaust. And I asked my mother at 5 years old for a piece of bread, and she said, I can't give you more bread, or tomorrow there won't be bread and you're going to die. And she didn't give me the bread. So listen, Baruch Hashem, that's finished. But at the same time, the hard work, a job, you got to feed your family. Oh, it's not the job I like. Too bad. Start that job now. Bring some money in. And at the same time, make connections, and hopefully you'll find a job that you like and pays you better. And if not, stick to your job. What responsibility do you have to take a woman, a wife, and make kids and not feed them? And these are Torah values. These are Torah values. No, I don't like it. It's not good. Get up and move. Chevra, we verbring this well. Have a great day. Take care. Take care.